Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today I'm going to be talking with you about how to melt gold. Now, we're going to talk about different topics that go along with that, but what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to take the majority of the placer gold I got last year, and last year was not a great year because I had a bad auto accident and a bunch of other stuff that really messed up my season. Oh, and then there were fires in the summer that they shut the forest areas that I normally prospect. They shut them down because was fires in the general areas, and actually some of the areas that I prospect did burn. They were in the fire. So last year was not a great year, but I'm gonna melt down my gold and put it into a good sized button. And what I normally do when I store my gold, I store it in a safety deposit box where it's going to be safe. And yeah, some of you guys are going to say that a safety deposit box isn't 100% safe, and I agree with you, it isn't 100% safe. But having it here at my house is also not 100% safe. And even if I hide it really well, still not 100% safe. I had stories about that, but I'm not going to go into it. My preference, my decision is to use a safety deposit box. But I will, rather than keep a bunch of bottles of little tiny, gold flakes and small gold that I found with my metal detector, I'm going to melt it down into a button because that's preparatory to sending it to a refiner. We'll talk about refiners too. We'll talk about melt losses and assays to test to see what purity your gold has. Okay, so in talking about melting gold, let's talk about equipment first. Actually, I don't have equipment listed, but let's talk about equipment first. They sell electrical melters that you can use that plug in. They don't run on any fuel other than electricity. I don't recommend those. And what I'll tell you is that the maximum temperature that you can reach with those kinds of electrical heating element things, and they have a graphite crucible that goes in them. The maximum temperature is just about what it takes to melt gold. You can melt gold in them, but if you get much hotter than the melting point of the gold, you can actually wreck the heating element. So I don't recommend those. I recommend, if you're going to melt gold, that you want to go with something that's gas fired, propane fired, and that's what I use. All my little one, my bigger one, they're all propane fired, and the propane, no problem getting to the temperature to melt gold. So that's my first thought. The second, the thing that we're really going to talk about a bit is fluxes. And a lot of people misunderstand what the purpose of a flux is. The purpose of a flux is not to take raw ore and convert it to gold. That's a whole nother process, and I'm actually going to do a video soon talking about that more. But the purpose of a flux is maybe the basic concept of processing gold ore is you crush the ore down to a small sand size. You process it by some means. If you have a really small sample, you might just pan it. If you have a larger sample, you might use something like a gold cube or some kind of special sluice box. Or you might use more commercial equipment like a shaker table. But you have some sort of way of concentrating, because in almost all gold ores, the gold part is only a tiny fraction of the amount of the ore. So, in rich ore, what's considered very rich ore in the gold mining industry would be 1 ounce of gold in a ton, 2,000 pounds of rock. That's a lot of rock for just 1 ounce of gold. So it's important to concentrate the material. So then when you have your concentrate, now your concentrate is not going to be 100% pure metallic gold. It's going to be, it's mostly gold, but may have a little bit of quartz still in there. You may have a little bit of iron oxides or some other thing, black sand, depending on where your gold comes from. And that's the job of the flux, to basically allow the gold to coalesce into one piece So if the gold has rust on it or something like that, the flux will take care of that so that all the little gold pieces can melt together into one piece of gold. And, generally speaking, what I use is a 50-50 mixture of borax and sodium carbonate. And you mix those together with probably about, the mixture of those is about twice the volume of your cons. So actually it works out to be about equal volume of borax, equal volume of cons, and equal volume of sodium carbonate. So you mix those together, you heat them up, get them to well above the temperature, the melting point of gold, and then you can pour your button or bar or whatever you're pouring. Now, after you've, gotten it into a bar or button form, you send it off if you're trying to cash it in. Now me, I'm gonna save that button, and someday I will go to a refiner, but I don't need the money right now, so I'm gonna keep it aside and be ready to go to a refiner sometime in the future if I need to. If the prices of gold get really high, I might choose to ship it off to a refiner, but I'm not in a dire need right now, so I'm gonna just, keep it in my safety deposit box. Now, one of the things I want to say about refiners, this is also about how to convert gold into cash. And refiners are generally, unless you have some kind of super crystalline gold specimen, and you can look at my video on crystalline gold if you're interested in that topic. But if you just have little placer fines from dry washing or crushing some hard rock ores or that sort of thing, which is, I have a lot of that, or even little small flakes that you found with a metal detector. They don't have any special great value greater than the bullion melt and the melt value, and so a refiner is the right place to send those. And what I do is I want to recommend that you never send to a refiner a package of fines, even if you saved it up for years and you had 10 or 15 ounces of placer fines and other fine gold that you have accumulated. It's just not a good idea to send it to a refiner directly that way. What I recommend is that you melt it and consolidate it into one piece, a bar or whatever shape that it doesn't make a difference whether it's cone shaped or bar shaped or whatever. The refiner is perfectly happy to deal with it, and send it to them in that form. One of the reasons that I do that is the topic of melt losses. What's melt losses, Chris? Well, when you have placer gold, like I say, there's probably only a certain percentage of that is gold, and there's a certain percentage of it that may be a little bit of leftover black sand or quartz or some other thing. And when you melt down the material to make a bar, that will be absorbed into the flux. And you may have started out with 12 ounces of fines and that kind of stuff that and you may only end up with 11 or 11 and a half or something like that of actual metallic gold, because the other half ounce or so, depending on how pure your concentrates are, was waste material and got absorbed into the flux. This is what happens when a lot of people send fines to a refiner. The small size gold is, they don't take that loss into account, and they don't know what it is because they haven't done it. So they send it in, and the refiner then comes back to them and says, well, you shipped us 11 ounces. And then you say, I shipped you 12. And the refiner says, I'm sorry, we melted it down. It was 11 ounces. And you said, but I shipped you 12. And people think, well, you ripped me off for an ounce. Well, that's not what really happened. What really happened was there were melt losses that you didn't expect. That's why I strongly recommend that you melt it for yourself, and you know that you didn't steal any gold if you melted down 12 ounces of concentrates and you ended up with 11 ounces of metallic gold in a bar or button or something, you know that it wasn't the refiner that ripped you off for that ounce. And you really don't know, it's hard to estimate what that amount is. Usually it's small, but it can be larger if you're not real good with keeping your concentrates fully pure. The other thing is assays. Now, no gold is 100% pure. Natural gold is never, and most miners tend to overestimate. You know, I get people telling me, "Oh, my gold is 98% pure." And yes, there are in a few places gold that's 98% pure. The vast majority is more like 85 to 90. Some is 90 to 95, some is less than 85. And the refiner will then only pay you for the amount of gold. So if you started with 12 ounces, you melted it down, you realized that 1 ounce melt loss, okay, you know that you didn't rip yourself off. You have 11 ounces that you send to the refiner, and the refiner says, well, it was only 85% pure, so you're going to get 0.85 times 11, or somewhere a little over 9 ounces that they're going to pay you for. You say, well, you ripped me off because there was 11 ounces there. Well, it was an ounce or two of silver and copper and other things. And usually if the percent, it depends on the refiner, they may or may not pay you for the little bit of silver that's in there. They certainly will not pay you for the copper or, you know, whatever else might be in there. So one of the things you might consider if you're just concerned about it is drill a hole into your, a small hole. You only need just like a real tiny, like a, you know, 32nd of an inch or, you know, something really small, 1/16 of an inch. Drill into the side of your bar before you send it in and get a small sample of the bar that you're going to send into a refiner, because then you can have it assayed for yourself. You can send it to an independent assay lab and they can tell you, well, your gold was, you know, 91% pure and you thought it was 97. Or they're going to tell you it's 87% pure and you thought it was 97. At least then you get a realistic number. So that's some information about melting gold and converting gold to cash. Let's go now and melt some gold. We'll go through it and do it for real together. Okay, well, I'm ready to get started melting. I've got my gold in the crucible here. It's actually a new crucible because it's got paper label still on it. Brand new crucible. You don't have to use a new crucible. Just by coincidence, I wanted one this size. Not too big, not too small. And so I'm using it. I've got my flux all mixed up. I'm going to take my flux now. And the flux amount is roughly, well, maybe a little more than twice the volume of the gold that's in here. I weighed the gold. It's a little over 43 grams. And I'm going to add this flux and we're going to see how much melt loss I get. You know, I don't expect a lot because this gold is pretty clean, but you know, depending on how much black sand and other stuff you had in there, it would affect the final weight. So pouring the flux in on top of the gold, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the furnace and get started. I'll light it up and I'll have you back and show you with the furnace on. Okay, I'm ready to light the furnace. We'll put a little piece of paper in there. That's about right. And let it heat up now and come back. I'll get my tongs out and we'll pull the thing out when it's red hot, melted, and ready to go. Okay, we're fully up to temperature, and I'm going to open the thing up, pull it out, and make a pour. Turned off the propane. Actually, here's our red hot crucible. Ready to make a pour. Okay, going into the mold. Okay, that was a nice clean pour. That was a nice clean pour, and the only thing to do now is to basically let it cool. So I'm going to close this lid to reduce thermal stress. We'll let this cool, and I'll bring you back. We'll turn it over and take a look. But it's going to take half an hour to cool. I'll let it cool plenty much. So, all right, next step. Okay, so it's been several hours. I actually had an appointment, I had lunch, I did it this morning. I melted the gold this morning, and it's been plenty of time, so it's all plenty cool to the touch. The only warmth on this graphite cone mold is just from sitting in the sun. So I'm going to turn it upside down, we'll see what we got. Oh, very pretty. Can you see the gold on top there? That looks absolutely gorgeous. Let me clean it up, separate it from the slag, from the flux, and we'll take a closer look. I'll show it to you close up. But it looks great. Very nice. Good size too. Excellent. So here's the button as it came out from the mold, and you can see that it looks really nice and clean. Sometimes you get buttons like this and they'll have a little bit more slag attached to them, or they may have imperfections. This one was nice and clean. It went right into the mold and filled it up perfectly, and the gold sank to the bottom, and it took a little bit of time for it to solidify. So it looks great. Now, it doesn't take much to separate the gold metal from the slag, because the metal just doesn't stick to the glass of the slag, the remainder of the flux. It just doesn't stick very well. So a couple taps with a hammer and it's nice and clean, especially if you have a good clean pour like this one. Now, I did weigh this up after I cleaned it, and I actually had 0.7 of a gram melt loss. Now, most of the gold in here was fairly clean, and there was just very little dry wash gold, but apparently there was enough loss in there that I had 0.7 of a gram. It was 43.3 grams before it got melted, and it was 42.6 afterwards. That's a 1.6% loss. But that's kind of what I was talking about earlier in the video, that you need to be aware of these things, and it's so much better when you make the melt and then see what happened, and if your final product weighs a little less, you know that it wasn't anybody that ripped you off. It was just your melting and the flux capturing some minor amounts of iron oxides or forts or something else, impurities that were in your placer gold. So this is the final product that I got, and I'll store it away
And in the future, we'll do a big gold pour with a bunch of buttons like this. Now, if you want to learn the skills to go out and find gold for yourself and be able to do dry washing or sluicing, panning, metal detecting for nuggets, if you want to gain the skills necessary to be successful at that, well, I wrote a book to help you do that. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now.
So let me tell you a little bit more about my book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I wrote it because I want you to be able to go out and find for yourself Fistful of Gold. And you can see that it's an encyclopedia with all kinds of information, pictures, and that sort of thing. It's not in color, but color would have cost me a lot more to have printed, and so the book would have cost a lot more. It's for sale on Amazon, and you can pick it up. I'll put a link in the description below. I also serve as the editor for a prospecting magazine. It's ICMJ's Prospecting and Mining Journal. And honestly, you should check that out. We got stories and information, legal stuff, everything you know to increase your skills as a prospector. I write articles in this every month, and a lot of other very experienced prospectors contribute to the magazine as well. So check the magazine out. Also, I have a website, and the website is at NevadaOutbackGems.com. I'll put a link for it in the description below, but there's gobs of information there that you will find useful in your prospecting efforts. Finally, I want to say that I really appreciate your comments and thoughts, and even positive criticism. Don't come on there and just toss out insults, because I'll just delete your comments. But if you've got helpful things to say and questions to ask, do write and put those in the comments, because I answer my comments to people, and you'll hear from me in responding to you. So if you've enjoyed this video and you like what you see and you're interested in finding out more, well then sign up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so they'll let you know when I post new videos. And like it and share it if again you see stuff that you really are excited about. And I'll be coming out with lots more new videos, and so we'll see you again real soon.